Hey guys, just out doing some maintenance on the tractor today, getting it ready for winter, which is on its way soon. It's second week of November and the temperature is starting to drop. So today I'm focusing on the starter. I had an issue last year where the starter would freeze up and I was constantly having to warm it with torches or keep the tractor plugged in all the time in order to have it start. So I've got the starter out here. And you can see up top here, I've got a bunch of silicone on, and that's from me hitting on this, trying to loosen up the solenoid and get the starter to actually engage. So the plan today is to get the solenoid back off, and I'm going to remove all the silicone that I put here, and I'm going to replace that with JB weld, which should be a lot stronger. And then the plan is to clean out this solenoid really good. I had put some lubricant in there because it was sticking last year, and I guess what happened was that was probably what was freezing because it's liquid. So I'm going to clean it really good. I'm going to use a graphite lube like you would use in locks, and I expect that would do a much better job of keeping it from seizing up whenever it's really cold. And while I'm at it, I'm going to repair some more of this damage here. Again, I was hitting this with a hammer. You can see I broke some of the plastic here. So the plan is to put some silicone in there and make sure that no water gets in. I'm also going to put silicone underneath this spot here where the two meet. Try to seal this off as good as I can, because it seemed like anytime that there was a day that the snow would melt at all and water would get in there, the next night it would freeze and the thing was so difficult to start. Really frustrating when it's really cold and you just want to get out and use the tractor. Doing a little research online, I see that it's more than just me that's having this problem, and it's happening to all sorts of tractors. Again, this is for my Belarus, but I've seen the same issues with John Deere and Massey Ferguson, so I think it'll be the same situation, just cleaning this out and making sure that it's as dry as possible inside and still lubricated. And while I'm at it, I'm going to get the cover off, and I'm just going to have a look at the brushes, make sure there's still some life left in there. I'm going to give this a good cleaning and painting, and just a good overhaul on it, just to get us going for another couple of years. And I figured I'd share that for any of you guys who are having similar issues, and we'll see if this solves our problem. So let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to start by removing the solenoid here. So in this style, once I got these screws off, I'm just going to pull straight up, and there's a little fork that comes and hits the plunger, and if there's a little spring, that spring is going to snap back a little bit, so we'll have to push it back when we put it back on, but we'll look at that after. But this will just pull straight out and right off of there, so we can see the piston and the spring I was talking about, and where this little fork engages and hooks on to that little pin inside of there. So we're going to put this aside and we're going to clean this later, and I think this is where the bulk of my problems are coming from. You can see that piston is quite corroded, so I'm probably going to take that out after and give it a good sanding and cleaning before we put any graphite lubricant in there and put it all back together, and hopefully that'll solve a lot of the problem. And then here we've got the actual starter and Bendix, and we can see that this stuff still engages pretty good, so we'll give that a good cleaning and some lubricating too, and hopefully we won't have too many issues this winter. So while I'm at it, I'm just going to take this cover off so you can see the brushes and everything in the back here. Put this down. So now just inside of here we can see the commutator on the inside, and we can see the little brushes, which I can see there's still quite a bit of material left on there. So I'm not going to do anything to change these or move them. This starter works really well, but I was just curious to see what kind of condition that commutator's in. It looks really good, nice and clean still. So Surprising considering how old this machine is. Okay, so now I'm going to disassemble the solenoid here. So this is the cover I'm going to repair later. We see here the spring and the little piston. So we can see a lot of corrosion in here, and this is an issue I had last year where this assembly here actually rusted out and it broke right off of here. So my starter wouldn't engage at all. So what I did is I took this down and I just welded it back together. But because it's steel, it's definitely rusting, and I can see that that is not smooth at all. So this is going to need a good sanding and cleaning up, some sort of polishing so it's nice and smooth. And then we're going to clean inside of here as well and make sure that's well lubricated. And there's a bit of a gasket here, but I'm going to put silicone gasket so that it's really well sealed. Just going to open up the back while we're at it. Now this won't go too far out because of the wires that are inside of there are soldered on, and I don't want to remove that, but I did want to move it back just enough that I can get some silicone squeezed in there and then a nice little bead around here. Then I can reassemble that and I'll be confident that it's well sealed from the elements. Okay, so I'm going to give this a little bit of a cleaning. My plan is to use some brake cleaner, but I've only got carb cleaner with me today. So I'm going to use this for now and finish the job with some brake cleaner later. So I'm just going to take my little wire brush and just kind of give that a little light scrubbing. Just to get any oil or grease that might be in there out. So now that I have that cleaned up, I'm just removing the leftover gasket on the inside of this cover. So we're going to replace that with silicone. You can still see some of the old fiber gasket in here. I'm just going to remove this bottom gasket here. Now I'm just going to take a little piece of a Scotch-Brite pad and just kind of push that in the hole there. Just use my finger to smooth out the edges of that cylinder. That's looking a lot better. Alright, so I removed all that silicone that I had placed on there last year, and you can see here that I did a lot of damage with the hammer, and that's basically just frustration when the thing's not starting and won't engage in the cold. I assumed that this was stronger than it was, but as you can see it's just thin aluminum. So I'm going to clean this up a little bit more. There's still a little bit of gasket inside of there. I'll try to pick that out. Then I'm going to grind away at this. I'll probably use my Dremel to grind the groove a little bit better, mix up some JB Weld, fix that crack, try to put a little extra on the inside there along the edges, sort of a little bead, and hopefully that'll help reinforce this. Then I'm going to clean the rest of it up. Alright, so I've got the JB Weld on there, and I'm really happy with how all of that fit in and spread out. And I even got on the inside. It looks like it'll seal quite well. So I'm going to let that cure, and we'll check back tomorrow. I'll have the brake cleaner, I'll have the graphite lube, and we'll finish up with these little guys, sanding those up and giving them good cleaning, and then reassemble all of this. Okay, so it's been about 24 hours and that JB Weld is nice and cured. So that's going to seal a lot better than what I had before. Really happy with how that turned out. So now what I'm going to do is take the rest of this coil, and I'm going to put silicone all around the inside. I'm going to lay that down, screw it in place, and then I'm going to patch this crack here with some more JB Weld. And then that whole top section should be in good shape. Okay, so I'm going to be using some Permatex Ultra Copper. I'm sure you've seen this stuff in my videos before. It's my go-to automotive silicone. So I'm just going to start here where it's the least accessible. Okay, so I'm just going to torque these screws down just a little bit so that the gasket starts to squish out, and then I'm going to stop. Just it. Right, so I'm just going to let that sit for a little bit. I like to let it cure just slightly before I actually torque anything down. So while I wait for that to cure, I'm just going to clean up the piston. So I think that's looking much better. I'm going to give it a coat of paint later, and that should slow the rusting down. Now we're going to do the same to the spring. So while I'm still waiting, I'm going to clean up a few more parts. This is just to make it look nice. Not going to help much other than maybe a better connection through this little ground, but I'm going to clean that up as well. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so now I'm going to do the final torque of these screws. Get it nice and tight. And then I'm just going to smear off the little bit of silicone that's sticking out. There, so that should give us a really nice seal. And as I said, I'm going to fix that little brake with some JB Weld. Once this is cured tomorrow, I'll probably pick out a little bit of it and fix that like I did the aluminum part. So I'm going to set this aside to cure till tomorrow. I'm going to work on cleaning up the rest of this as best I can. Just going to clean out the outside and anything that I can reach around here where something may be sticking when the temperature gets cold. So I'm probably going to degrease a lot and use that graphite lubricant all inside of here. Okay, so we're gonna get some brake cleaner on here. I'm just gonna use my wire brush to clean this up. So I'm just going to take a little peek inside. I'm sure these bolts are what holds this front piece on. So I just like to see when this piece moves, if there's any liquid on the inside of there, maybe some water or some old diluted oil that I'd like to clean up and either put some good grease or, like I said, that graphite lubricant, so that this piece here isn't the part that freezes in the winter. Okay, so that's a nice big armature there. And looking at these brushes, I'd say there's still a lot of life left in those. Springs look good, so that'll be good for a couple of years, I'm sure. So I can see there's a lot of liquid on the inside of here, a lot of old grease. This tractor leaks a lot of fluid, so I'm going to clean that up as best I can. Oh. This guy out of the way. Okay, so I've got that whole thing disassembled. You can see here, there's a lot of gunk inside of there and some liquid. The liquid is likely just the brake fluid, the brake cleaner that I sprayed in there. But it's a gunky mess. That's all stuff that's going to absorb water and hold on to it and freeze in the winter. So I want this thing clean as a whistle. And then we're gonna spray graphite lubricant everywhere. And hopefully that solves my problem. So I'm going to continue cleaning this up. Okay, so as you can see, I've got the stator back on and the rest of the motor. And I was just putting these two main bolts that hold it together back in. And there's an O-ring on the top here, so when the cap goes over this, it should seal. But I'm not 100% sure that's sealing enough for me. Like I said, I want to keep this guy dry. So looking at the bottom here, I just noticed that there's a groove. I don't think there's any O-ring or anything in there. So I'm going to take this back off just enough that I can put another bead of silicone in there and try to get this guy sealed up a little bit better. I'm not worried about it overheating. I'm just more worried about water getting in and causing issues. Okay, so I just propped it up a little bit there with a wrench, and I'm going to put a little bead in there. Okay, so now we're going to tighten those bolts up. There, and those are just snug until that cures just a little, and then I'll tighten up the last little bit. While we wait for that, let's clean this cover up. So I'm about to torque down that silicone, and then I'm going to let that cure overnight. And while I'm at it, I'm going to spray these parts with paint. Again, to reduce the corrosion. And this guy, along with the rest of the body, I think I'm going to do in some metallic silver. This is a color match I tried to get for the 370. I don't think it matches great, and there's not a whole lot I want to paint anyway, so I'll use this stuff up. Okay, so let's get that solenoid back together. Start by putting silicone around the outer surface here. Just going to put the spring in place. Then the piston. Gotta make sure I get the orientation right. And I'm gonna put the top on. Okay, now I have that assembled. I'm just going to give it a few minutes for the silicone to cure before I tighten that down. And inside we can see the little fork and spring. We're going to pull that back when we put it onto the motor. While I wait for that, I'm going to put this cover back on. So I don't know if I mentioned this, but there's an O-ring along the inside here that I'm not confident is going to do a good enough job of sealing. So I'm going to add some silicone there too. and a little more where the screws go. Okay, back to the solenoid. We're going to tighten that up now. Okay, so that's ready to go. Now I'm going to fix that spot that I broke last year, and then this will be ready to go onto the starter. Okay, while I'm waiting for that JB weld to cure, that'll be good 24 hours. I can still install this solenoid back onto the starter. So I'm going to do that now. So first, more silicone around the seal here. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to have to push this spring back while I hook it onto the fork there. Let's use a screwdriver. Give it a little push. Fits right in. Locks in place. I'll get some screws in there. Alright, so that's going to get a few minutes before I torque it down too, and that should be about it. Okay, so the last thing to do now is to just put this little copper piece back. Okay, so that's about it for this repair. If the weather's nicer tomorrow, I'm going to put this back in the tractor. I won't know until the middle of winter when it gets really cold if this solved my sticking issue, but I'm pretty confident that it will. I'll update in the video description and maybe let you guys know in the comments if I have any issues with it, but we'll see if this does the job. If any of you are having similar issues with your starters freezing, maybe give something like this a try. If you found this video helpful, I'd appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do. And I'll see you in the next one.